You get a lot of Dutch infusion, but you still have pocketed segments.
Yeah.
And so what it really comes down to, though, is it would talk like this the country of Colombia. So huge swaths of it got wiped out as cannabis to do coca. So nobody held the genes. They just grow coca clone. And then the stuff that fit that region is no longer there. So you have to bring in other Colombian stock from other parts of Colombia into the region and then start to do breeding projects to be able to make selections where it comes out and shines and does all what it's supposed to do in that area.
Is the Santa Marta gold likely gone at this point?
No, I don't think so. I don't
think is there some
when I hung out with the guys from Cali, they had 50 lines preserved, and so these were real Colombians that were successful. You know, they had spent generations being in the trade.
Yeah, Cali's different.
It is.
Yep. It's very different from the
It
rest
is
of Colombia.
different, and they're the ones that they were brought in. That's how I met all the guys from Cali. We were all brought together to work on a common project, but they knew who I was, and so they said, "Hey, we want to take you into our world and let you check out. Let us hang out with you for a while." So I said, "I'm down." So it let me spend some time with a group that had been preserving and holding for time. And so I'm talking to a dude in Thailand right now too that went over.
Are we gonna get the chocolate Thai back?
It'll
the
come
Thai
back,
stem.
yeah, because what you have is the issue that they're not told. So like when I get to talk to the locals in all these different places, the lecture I give them is the same thing. I said, listen, 10% of your total sales is going to be your indigenous shit. Just know this, because it's not going to really be desired by many, because we've created a situation where they want narcotic visual pot, where it's really strong in a certain way, and it looks incredible in a certain way. So just know that it's going to be just like wine. 85% of the people want a light wine. It's what it is.
I mean, the Thai would never looked good to begin with. That's why they tied it. That's why they tied it to a stick, right?
And so, but if 10% of your total product line was indigenous and it was grown in living soil, like you're actually in Thai soil, you're in a region that produced good quality, then that is your same thing if it was in Africa or in Mexico or Colombia, because I give the lecture, every group that brings me in, I give them the same lecture, and then they understand what I'm trying to say. You have an external and an internal market. Every country does. People that are coming from outside the country to consume, people that are consuming from inside the country. The people that are inside the country want things they can't get in the country. So that's who you're really serving with American and Dutch genes. But people who come into your country, the 10% of the consumers that aren't from your country, they don't want Dutch genes or American genes because they can get that shit. What they want is the stuff they can't get. And if you can't have your own product line that is reflecting your region, you're incomplete. You're just incomplete, man. It's just not, what's the point? It could be anywhere. And so each region then becomes a question of who do we look to mine the genes, and then how do we make sure that there's the ability to create the interest and valuation of it. And then I know that once you start to get dialed in with what you're doing, that product can now move into a global. Because if someone said to me, and we knew them, right? So it's about the buyer. So the person who's doing the buying, whoever that brand name, whatever the fuck that guy is, girl, they're the ones that are going to quantify quality with it, just like tea and coffee. They go to the country of origin, they grade it, and then they release it. I would love to get some real Cambodian.
So those pockets of genetics are still preserved.
Well, you take your guy Santa Marta Gold that he has.
Yeah.
Take it to Santa Marta.
Bring it back, right?
Don't grow it here.
Mm-hmm. You can't grow equatorials and have them express fully without being equatorial. Because and people debate this shit all the time about no, we tune the light. But I'm like, look, I'm not a light scientist, but I got exposed to some really smart ones, like brilliant light scientists. And what I know is that light isn't just energy; light's information. And so when you're not giving the information to the plant that was indigenously developed there for millennia on its own, how does it communicate and produce what it was meant to produce? And so the genes need to get brought back. But like that Ghazni stock that I passed out all over the place,
Okay.
that Ghazni region's being devastated right now. Devastated. The Taliban are sweeping through there, cleaning it out. And so everybody's screaming about how there's like no Ghazni left. We at least can hold the gene and do what he did, which is inbreed it, refresh the population, so that in 10, 15, 20 years, when you have another political overthrow and you have a stable situation, the genes can be brought back to that place and then receive the information. That was my whole, that was how I fought that hop latent issue, was that I used, it was from Alan Atkinson. He helped me understand about natural balance of a plant. He said if you can get a plant to go into a homeostasis situation, he goes, it should fight off pretty much most pathogens because it's what it does. And so I said, let's try. And I knew that I needed natural sunlight and I needed a biological bottom end, and I watched the plant shed that tissue and emerge with fresh tissue that was clean. So when we did, and I had labs testing it, so we knew it had hop latent, but it didn't express it in a form that was detrimental to the quality of the product or the output. So the information provided from, like, you can make a plant produce like crazy, but I don't care. The high is always different to me. And when I mess around with equatorials, they're always better on the equator. And so I think what we need to do is you match what you do, and what we've tried to do, I think, here is try to focus too heavily in these small pockets of cultivation, where we ought to focus on what grows best in Humboldt, and then allow San Diego to really, like San Diego would grow some killer shit, because you go into December.
It's an intersection that you
Yeah,
talked about. You
yeah.
talk about in our lesson online, right? It's
Yeah.
that intersection of the cultivator, the
Yeah.
genetics, the location,
Location.
and the methodology, right?
And the cultivator just has to have low ego. You know, you got to be able to turn it off so that you're able to just admit that we can only do certain things. I'm limited, so I have to choose populations that let me focus on like better quality. So I think that as long as we can find the genes, because what you can do too now is you can sequence the genes and you can start to take a look and identify in the pool how do you steer populations quicker, so it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it's going to take us the same amount of time it did to do discovery, because we already have markers that let us know, okay, these are these things. And so when we see the bigger population, it should allow us to start to pull breeding pairs out and get the quality. It's the same thing with haze, right? When I talk to some of the seed companies, like privately, and said, like, I'm going to buy a bunch of your stock, how many do I really need to find a winner? Like a real winner, like the winner that like tore the top of your head off kind of shit, that like put the name on it, right? They go 1 out of 100. So in order for me really to look for a population, I needed to go up to 1,000 so I could find 10. And then I have, because we would call it the acid pheno. Right? The acid pheno is the nickname, the hallucinogenic haze.
Yeah.
But really it's rare. And when I talked to the dude, I was like, what? I said, I'm not gonna tell anybody. I'm not gonna tell you your name. What's the frequency that it emerges? He said, 1, 2 out of 100 tops. So that means I knew I was going to need 1,000 seeds if I wanted to hunt it. And it starts to become a problem to hunt 1,000 haze seeds because of the size and the work and keeping the copies.
You need a lot of room.
And a lot of testing.
Yeah.
So like in order to do some of this stuff, so when your frequency is at that range, it's not good. And so when I was talking to another one of my partners who's an equatorial breeder, for him it's completely selection based, where he sent me some stock to play with, and he said, I said, is that enough to find something? He goes, yeah. He goes, the issue that you were experiencing is they weren't choosing the parents correctly. He said, so the frequency of these things emerging weren't prevalent. He said, but from our selection on a bigger platform and how we grabbed it, he goes, we know that you're only going to need 10 of these to find something that's quality. So it's just a matter of time, But I think the issue was the seeds preserved in a way that allowed them to be regenerated.
Personally, I'm looking forward to that day, when we get the opportunity to smoke that Thai stick. Grown in Thailand again. Chocolate Thai, that Santa Marta Gold from Santa Marta, the Oaxacan from, Mexico,
that dusty yellow clumpy, it was screaming high, you get so lit up. We would get the Colombian coming in around like end of August, September, and we'd start your school year, right, with fresh Colombian. And I
Nice
remember,
kick off to the school year.
oh my God, and I remember some of this stuff being so powerful. And the amount of resin coming off the end of the joint left it all over your teeth. You always had everybody had brown teeth.
Wasn't smoking nothing. Who was smoking? I was
And your lip
smoking
was
nothing.
stuck to your tooth. Man, I miss that shit. So, and I think that it'll all emerge again as long as that we're able to. You have to kind of help the companies who are building their worlds in other places understand the reality that the Instagram lead is king, but that doesn't mean that it's the only king. And that in your country you have to reflect what you have. If I went to Mexico and I got to go out into the high deserts, I would love to smoke something that had been grown there.
Variety is the spice of life.
For real.
Okay, and that's what you get with these exotic strains. Is you get the variety, the taste of those places.
Yes, for real. You can't do it indoor. You can't do it in a greenhouse. You can't do it here. Here are the things that we select here shine here. But man, tropical herb has a profile you can't grab. And I thought about years ago, like I used to think about this when I was trying to shortcut the truth. But I was like, if we could just do soil analysis and bring back the soil, and then you could do microbial analysis and then a soil analysis, you could kind of create a living matrix that would replicate the bottom end. So I thought that I was getting into this, this is how we'll get around it. But when I met that light scientist, Tessa Babcock, and she was working for, she was developing the first LED lights that came out. But she was on loan from the Bill Gates Institute. So she was, I mean, brilliant. And she and I hung out, and we worked on a project for probably like 6-7 months together. So I got to talk to her a lot and spend time, and the key element I got from her was that sunlight's magic, and that we don't understand it. That no, you can't replicate it. We can make the plant have responses with artificial spectra.
You don't say.
The
You
data's
can't
not there.
replicate the sun. You
No.
don't say.
No, you can't. And it's just, it's, but what we've done is we've skewed lighting to drive a result. So when herb looks blown out and chunky, it's considered to be better. And the more frost we put on it and the more color we drive, but at the end of the day, you know, is it giving you, to me, what I notice with the direction of cannabis is it's a more homogenous type effect. And so that soon I get bored to where I'm like, same shit. That's why I hunt so much through weird populations, because I'm just tired of the same high.
That's why complex is always better than singular.
Yes.
Singular one flavor is great, but
For-
multiple layers.
You don't get tired of it the same degree, because if depending on you, you're gonna pick up different profiles.
Love it.
Yeah,
Cool,
me too.
man.
Me too.
All right.